Tae-ho Kim stared at the broken engine parts scattered across the floor of his cargo ship. Black smoke still came from the main power unit. The smell of burned metal filled the air. He kicked a piece of twisted metal and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his toe. Great. Just great, he said to himself. His ship, the Lucky Star, was not living up to its name today. He was stuck at Nexus Station, a huge spaceport that floated between 3 different star systems. It was the kind of place where traders, smugglers, and people running from trouble all mixed together. The repair shop owner, a short alien with green skin and too many eyes, had given him bad news. The parts he needed would take 2 weeks to arrive. 2 weeks of eating station food and paying docking fees that would drain his savings. Tae-ho walked through the busy corridors of the station. Beings from dozens of different worlds moved around him. Some had scales, others had fur. Few had no legs at all and floated using anti-gravity devices. The air was filled with the sounds of different languages and the smell of exotic foods. He found himself in the lower levels of the station, where the lights were dimmer and the crowds were rougher. This was where people came when they didn't want to be found. Tae-ho wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble had a way of finding him. The stellar cantina looked like every other space bar Tae-ho had ever seen. Dark corners, flickering lights, and the sound of too many conversations happening at once. He ordered a drink and sat at the bar, trying to figure out how he was going to pay for the repairs. That's when he saw her. She sat at a round table in the back corner, playing cards with 3 other beings. She was unlike anyone Tae-ho had ever seen. Her skin was a deep blue color that seemed to shimmer in the low light. She was tall and had muscles that showed she was a fighter. Her hair was white as snow and fell to her shoulders. When she moved, it was with the grace of a cat and the power of a warrior. But what caught Tae-ho's attention most was how she played cards. Every move was smooth and confident. The other players looked nervous around her. She won hand after hand, with a small smile on her face. "She's good," said a voice next to him. Tae-ho turned to see a trader he recognized from the docks. The man was watching the card game too. "That's a Vorthak. They're warriors from the Outer Rim. She's been winning all night." Tae-ho had heard of the Vorthak. They were known as one of the toughest fighting species in the galaxy. Their ships were feared by pirates and respected by everyone else. But this one was just playing cards in a cantina. "What game are they playing?" Tae-ho asked. "Stellar Dominion. It's like poker, but with holographic cards that change based on cosmic events. Take skill and luck." The trader finished his drink. "Why? You thinking of joining?" Tae-ho wasn't much of a gambler, but he had played poker with his crew many times during long trips between stars. He had even won a few games against other traders. How different could this be? "Maybe," he said. The trader laughed. "Kid, I've been coming to this station for 20 years. I've seen that Vorthak play before. She doesn't just win games, she destroys people. Last week, a Centauri merchant lost his entire cargo to her in one hand. But Tae-ho wasn't listening anymore. He was watching the way she moved her cards, the way she studied the other players. There was something about her that drew him in. Maybe it was the way she seemed so sure of herself. Maybe it was because she was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. Before he knew what he was doing, Tae-ho was walking toward the table. The game stopped as he approached. All eyes turned to him. The Vorthak female looked up at him with eyes that were the color of deep space. They seemed to look right through him. "Table's full, human," said one of the other players, a reptilian being with yellow scales. "Actually," said the Vorthak female, her voice smooth and strong, "Grix just lost his last credit. There's room for one more." She gestured to an empty chair. "If you're brave enough to play." Tae-ho felt his heart race. Up close, she was even more impressive. She was taller than him by at least 6 inches, and the way she held herself showed she was used to being in charge. Her blue skin had silver markings that looked like they might be tattoos or natural patterns. "I'm brave enough," Tae-ho said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. She smiled, showing teeth that were sharp but not threatening. "I'm Kira, and you are?" "Tae-ho Kim." "Well, Tae-ho Kim, do you know how to play Stellar Dominion?" "I know poker," he said. Kira's smile grew wider. Close enough. The rules are simple. The cards change based on the stellar map above us. She pointed to a holographic display floating over the table. It showed the positions of nearby stars and planets. When a star flares, fire cards become stronger. When a planet moves into alignment, cosmic cards gain power. Everything else is like your human poker. Tejo nodded and sat down. The chair was too big for him, clearly made for larger beings. He felt very small at this table. The first few hands went well. Tejo won 2 small pots using basic poker strategy. The holographic elements were confusing at first, but he started to understand the patterns. More importantly, he was getting to talk to Kira. She was different from what he expected. Yes, she was a warrior, but she was also smart and funny. She told stories about her travels across the galaxy. She laughed at his jokes about human customs. When she concentrated on her cards, a small line appeared between her eyebrows that Tejo found adorable. As the night went on, Tejo found himself caring less about winning and more about impressing her. When she raised the stakes, he matched her. When she smiled at him, his heart skipped a beat. That was his first mistake. "Let's make this interesting," Kira said after he won a particularly large hand. "What do you say to a real wager?" "What did you have in mind?" Tejo asked. "If I win the next hand, you tell me the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to you." Tejo laughed. "And if I win, I'll buy your drinks for the rest of the night." It seemed harmless enough. Tejo agreed. He lost. The story about falling into a waste disposal unit while trying to impress a girl back on Earth made Kira laugh so hard that other people in the cantina turned to look. "Your turn to make a wager," she said. That was his second mistake. As the night went on, the stakes kept getting higher. Soon they were playing for significant amounts of money. Other beings gathered around the table to watch. Tejo was winning. Some hands and losing others, but he was having more fun than he'd had in months. Then came the final hand. Tejo looked at his cards. They were good. Very good. 3 cosmic cards and 2 stellar cards that matched the current star positions perfectly. According to the rules Kira had taught him, this was almost unbeatable. Kira studied her cards with that same small smile she'd worn all night. "I'll raise you," she said, pushing more credit chips into the center of the table. Tejo looked at his cards again. He was sure he had her beat, but he was almost out of money. "I don't have enough credits to match that," he said. Kira's smile grew mysterious. "Then bet something else." "Like what?" "How about everything you have?" The words hung in the air. Around the table, the other beings suddenly went very quiet. Even the noise from the rest of the cantina seemed to fade away. Tejo looked at his cards one more time. They were perfect. There was no way Kira could have a better hand. "Everything I have," he repeated. "Everything," Kira confirmed. Tejo pushed all his remaining credits into the pot. "Deal." They laid down their cards. Kira had 4 cosmic cards and 1 stellar card, but as she placed them on the table, something amazing happened. A star on the holographic display above them suddenly flared bright white. According to the rules, this made her stellar card worth more than any other combination. She had won. Tejo stared at the cards in shock. How had she known the star would flare? How had she timed it so perfectly? "Good game," Kira said, collecting the credits. But instead of looking happy about winning, she looked almost sad. "Yeah, good game," Tejo said weakly. He had just lost everything he owned. Kira stood up and walked around the table to him. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Tejo Kim," she said formally, "by the ancient laws of my people, you have just entered into a marriage contract with me." The cantina erupted in noise. Some beings were laughing. Others were shouting in surprise. A few looked horrified. "A what?" Tejo asked, his voice barely a whisper. "When you bet everything you have, you bet your life and future according to Vorthak law. By losing, you have agreed to become my husband." The room started to spin. Tejo felt like he couldn't breathe. "But I didn't know," he started to say. "Ignorance? Of the law doesn't change the law, Kira said, but her voice was gentle. Welcome to the family, husband. Teho's last thought before he fainted was that the lucky star really wasn't living up to its name. Teho woke up to the sound of metal clanging against metal. His head hurt, and for a moment he couldn't remember where he was. The ceiling above him was made of dark metal with glowing blue lines running through it. This wasn't his ship. He sat up quickly, which was a mistake. His head spun and he had to close his eyes until the feeling passed. When he opened them again, he saw Kira sitting in a chair nearby, watching him with those deep space eyes. You're awake, she said. Good. We need to talk. Everything came rushing back. The card game, the bet, the marriage contract. Teho felt sick to his stomach. Where am I? He asked, looking around the room. It was bigger than any room on his cargo ship, with walls that curved upward like they were inside something huge. My family's ship, the Stellar Fang. Kira stood up and walked to a window. Outside, Teho could see stars moving past. They were traveling through space at incredible speed. We left Nexus Station 3 hours ago. You kidnapped me? Kira turned back to him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain. According to Vorthak law, you're my husband now. That means you're part of our clan. We couldn't leave you behind. Teho tried to stand up, but his legs felt weak. This is crazy. I don't even know you. I certainly didn't agree to marry you. You bet everything you had, Kira said simply. In our culture, that includes your life and future. The contract is binding. Before Teho could respond, the door to the room opened with a soft hiss. A being walked in that made Teho's breath catch in his throat. If Kira was impressive, this being was terrifying. He was at least 8 feet tall with the same blue skin and white hair, but his body was covered in what looked like natural armor. Scars ran across his arms and face, telling stories of battles won and lost. His eyes were the same color as Kira's, but where hers were warm, his were cold as ice. Father, Kira said, bowing her head slightly. This is Teho Kim, my husband. The giant being looked down at Teho like he was studying an interesting insect. When he spoke, his voice was deep and powerful, like thunder rolling across mountains. So this is the human who doesn't know our laws but still dared to make a contract with my daughter. He walked closer, and Teho had to crane his neck to look up at him. I am Elder Nex, leader of the Stellar Wind Clan, and you, small human, are now my son-in-law. Teho's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Elder Nex continued to study him. You are smaller than I expected, weaker too. Are all humans so fragile? Father, Kira said, a warning in her voice. It's a fair question, Elder Nex replied. This human is now part of our clan. If he cannot survive our way of life, what use is he? Teho finally found his voice. Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just a cargo ship engineer. I fix engines and transport goods between systems. I'm not a warrior or anything special. Elder Nex raised an eyebrow. You fix things? Yes, sir. Engines, computers, life support systems. Whatever needs fixing. Something changed in Elder Nex's expression. He looked at Kira, then back at Teho. Interesting. Come with me, human. Let's see if you're as useless as you look. He turned and walked toward the door. Kira helped Teho to his feet. Where is he taking me? Teho whispered. To test you, Kira replied. It's what we do with all new clan members. They walked through corridors that were unlike anything Teho had ever seen. The walls were organic-looking, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. Blue lights ran along the ceiling like veins carrying energy to different parts of the ship. Other Vorthak moved through the corridors, all of them tall and strong-looking. They stopped to stare at Teho as he passed. Some looked curious, others looked amused. A few looked like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Elder Nex led them to a large room filled with machinery. The air hummed with power, but something was wrong. Sparks flew from one of the control panels and a warning alarm was beeping steadily. Our gravity generator has been failing for weeks, Elder Nex said. Our engineers cannot find the problem. If you are truly good at fixing things, fix this. Taeho looked around the room. The technology was far more advanced than anything on his cargo ship, but the basic principles were the same. Energy came in, got processed, and went out to create artificial gravity throughout the ship. He walked to the sparking control panel and studied it carefully. The design was different from human technology, but he could see the logic behind it. After a few minutes, he found the problem. "Your power coupling is loose," he said, pointing to a connection that looked perfectly fine to everyone else. "And this relay is overheating because it's working too hard to compensate." He looked around and found a toolkit. The tools were made for Vorthak hands and were much too big for him, but he made them work. Within 30 minutes, he had tightened the coupling and replaced the overheating relay with a spare he found nearby. The sparking stopped. The alarm went quiet. The gravity in the room, which had been slightly unstable, suddenly felt solid and normal. Elder Nex stared at the now quiet machinery. "How did you do that? Our best engineers have been working on this for weeks." Taeho shrugged. "Sometimes you need fresh eyes to see a problem. Your engineers were looking for complex solutions to what was actually a simple problem." A new voice spoke from behind them. "Impressive." They turned to see another Vorthak, this one female like Kira, but older. She had the same blue skin and white hair, but her face showed wisdom and strength that came with age. She wore robes that marked her as someone important in the clan. "Mother," Kira said, bowing her head. "This is Taeho." "I am Zela," the older female said, looking at Taeho with intelligent eyes. "I heard we had gained a new son. I wanted to see him for myself." Unlike Elder Nex, who was intimidating through sheer size and power, Zela was intimidating through presence. When she looked at Taeho, he felt like she could see right into his soul. "You fixed our gravity generator," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." "In 30 minutes. Yes, ma'am." Zela nodded slowly. "Interesting." She looked at her husband. "Perhaps this human is not as useless as he appears." "He's still weak," Elder Nex said, "and small, and he knows nothing of our customs. But he can do things we cannot," Zela replied. "That has value." Before anyone could say more, a young Vorthak came running into the room. He was smaller than the adults, but still taller than Taeho. His blue skin was darker than the others, and his white hair was cut short in a style that looked almost human. "Sister," he called to Kira. "Is it true? Did you really marry a human?" Kira sighed. "Roth, meet your new brother-in-law." "Taeho, this is my younger brother, Roth." Roth walked around Taeho in a circle, studying him like he was an exotic animal. "He's so small. Are you sure he's a grown human?" "I'm 28 years old," Taeho said, starting to get annoyed. 28? Roth looked amazed. "I'm only 45 and I'm still considered young by our standards." "How long do Vorthak live?" Taeho asked. "About 300 years, Kira answered. "How long do humans live?" "Maybe 80 or 90 years if we're lucky." The room went quiet. Elder Nex and Zela exchanged looks that Taeho couldn't interpret. "That changes things," Zela said finally. "Changes what?" Taeho asked. "Marriage contracts among our people are for life," Elder Nex explained. "If human lifespans are so short, it means the contract is still valid, but it won't last as long as we expected," Zela finished. Taeho wasn't sure if that was good news or bad news. Roth, who had been listening to this conversation with growing excitement, suddenly grinned. "This is going to be fun. I've never had a human brother before. Can you teach me human swear words? I heard humans have the best swear words in the galaxy." "Roth," Kira said in a warning tone. "What?" "I'm just curious about human culture." Elder Nex cleared his throat. "Speaking of culture, we need to discuss your place in our clan, Taeho Kim. As Kira's husband, you have certain rights and responsibilities. Such as? You are now a member of the Stellar Wind clan. That means you're under our protection, but you also owe us your loyalty. You'll live on our ship and contribute to our community." Taeho felt overwhelmed. "But I have my own ship, my own life. I can't just abandon everything." "Your ship is being repaired at Nexus Station," Kira said. My father sent a crew to fix it and bring it here. Your possessions are being moved to quarters next to mine. You can't just take over my life. Zila stepped forward. Child, you made a binding contract. In our society, contracts are sacred. To break one would dishonor not just you, but our entire clan. But I didn't understand what I was doing. Ignorance doesn't change the law, Elder Neck said firmly. However, he continued, his voice softening slightly, we are not unreasonable. You will be given time to adjust. Kira will teach you our customs. If after 1 year you truly cannot adapt to our way of life, we will discuss other options. What kind of other options? We'll figure that out if we need to, Zella said diplomatically. Teho looked around at these beings who claimed to be his new family. Elder Necks, tall and intimidating but not cruel. Zella, wise and calculating but fair. Roth, young and curious about everything. And Kira, beautiful and strong and somehow both a fierce warrior and the person who had laughed at his jokes in the cantina. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Okay, he said finally. 1 year. But I want to send a message to my sister. She's going to worry when she can't find me. 2 weeks had passed since Teho had woken up on the Stellar Fang, and he was starting to understand that living with the Vorthak was like being in a boot camp run by very polite giants. Every morning started at what they called First Star, roughly 6 in the morning by human standards. The clan gathered in the main hall for morning exercises that were supposed to prepare their bodies and minds for the day ahead. For the Vorthak, this meant practicing combat moves and meditation. For Teho, this meant trying not to fall over while doing stretches designed for beings twice his size. Your balance is improving, Kira said as she watched him attempt a basic fighting stance. She had been patient with him, teaching him their language and customs every day. I only fell down 3 times this morning, Teho replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. That's a new record. Kira laughed, and the sound made something warm flutter in Teho's chest. Over the past 2 weeks, he had discovered that she wasn't just beautiful and strong. She was also kind, funny, and surprisingly gentle for someone who could probably break him in half without trying. The clan council meets today, she said, helping him up from where he had collapsed after attempting a particularly difficult move. They want to give you the 3 traditional tests. Teho's good mood vanished. Tests. Every new clan member must prove they can contribute to our community. The tests are meant to show your courage, wisdom, and loyalty. And if I fail? Kira hesitated. Let's not worry about that. My family likes you. You fixed the gravity generator, and yesterday you helped repair the navigation computer. They see your value. But Teho could see the worry in her eyes. These tests were important, and failing them might mean more than just embarrassment. After morning exercises, the clan gathered in the main hall. It was a huge space with a curved ceiling that showed the stars outside. Elder Neck stood at the center wearing formal robes that made him look even more impressive than usual. Teho Kim, he called out in his deep voice. Step forward. Teho walked to the center of the hall, trying not to show how nervous he felt. The entire clan, nearly 200 Vorthak, watched him with curious eyes. As a new member of the Stellar Wind clan, you must prove your worth through 3 trials, Elder Nex announced. The Hunt of Valor, to show your courage. The Trial of Wisdom, to show your intelligence. The Bond of Trust, to show your loyalty to your new family. Murmurs ran through the gathered clan. Some sounded encouraging, others doubtful. The first test begins now. Elder Nex continued. The Hunt of Valor. In the cargo bay, we have captured a void stalker, a creature that feeds on metal and can phase through solid matter. You must capture it without weapons, using only your wits and courage. Teho felt his heart sink. A void. Stalker sounded terrifying, and he was supposed to catch it with his bare hands. I'll take him to the cargo bay, Kira said, but Elder Nex shook his head. He must face this alone. That is the way of the trial. Teho followed a clan member to the cargo bay, his mind racing. How was he supposed to catch something that could phase through walls? The Vorthak were warriors. They probably expected him to wrestle the creature into submission. But he wasn't a warrior. He was an engineer. The cargo bay was huge and dimly lit. In the center was a large cage that seemed to be empty. But as Taeho got closer, he could see something moving inside, a shape that flickered in and out of existence like a ghost. "There it is," said the clan member who had brought him. "You have 1 hour. Good luck, human." Taeho was left alone with the creature. He studied it carefully, using his engineer's mind to understand what he was dealing with. The Void Stalker was about the size of a large dog, with long claws and teeth that glowed in the dark. When it phased through the cage bars, they seemed to bend around it rather than block it. A direct approach wouldn't work, but maybe an indirect one would. Taeho spent 20 minutes searching the cargo bay for materials. He found power cables, metal plating, and some old computer parts. Working quickly, he built something that looked like a large metal box with cables running to the ship's power system. When he activated it, the box began to hum with electromagnetic energy. The Void Stalker, which had been ignoring him, suddenly became very interested. It moved toward the box, drawn by the electromagnetic field. Taeho had remembered something from his engineering training. Creatures that could phase through matter usually did so by manipulating electromagnetic fields around their bodies. If he could create a stronger field, he might be able to disrupt their phasing ability. As the Void Stalker got closer to his device, its flickering became less stable. When it tried to phase through the box to get to the energy source inside, it couldn't. For the first time, it was solid and stuck. Taeho quickly activated a containment field he had built into the device. The Void Stalker was trapped. When the clan members came to check on him, they found the creature secured in his improvised trap, looking confused but unharmed. "How did you do that?" asked the clan member who had brought him. "I didn't fight it," Taeho explained. "I gave it something it wanted more than freedom, then used its own abilities against it." News of his success spread quickly through the ship. By the time he returned to the main hall, the clan was buzzing with excitement. Even Elder Nex looked impressed. "The first trial is passed," he announced. "Tomorrow, the trial of wisdom." That night, Kira came to his quarters. They sat together looking out at the stars, and for the first time since the marriage contract, the silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward. "You surprised everyone today," she said. "Including me," Taeho replied. "I was sure I was going to be eaten by that thing. My people respect strength, but they respect intelligence more. What you did today showed both." She turned to look at him. "You didn't try to be something you're not. You used your own skills in your own way. Is that unusual?" "Very. Most people who try to join our clan attempt to act like Vorthak. You're the first person I've seen who stayed true to himself while adapting to our ways." The next morning brought the trial of wisdom. The clan gathered in the library, a room filled with ancient texts and holographic displays showing the history of the Vorthak people. Elder Nex presented Taeho with a puzzle that had been challenging Vorthak scholars for generations. It was a complex riddle written in their ancient language involving mathematical concepts and philosophical ideas that made Taeho's head hurt just looking at them. "Many of our greatest minds have tried to solve this riddle," Elder Nex explained. "It is said that the answer will reveal a great truth about the nature of existence itself." Taeho stared at the riddle for an hour, trying to understand the ancient Vorthak symbols and concepts. The mathematics were beyond anything he had studied, and the philosophy was even more confusing. But then he noticed something. The riddle wasn't just written in ancient Vorthak. There were subtle differences in the symbols that suggested they might represent something else entirely. "Can I borrow a computer?" he asked. Working quickly, he entered the symbols into a translation program. But instead of treating them as words, he treated them as numbers. What emerged was not a philosophical riddle at all, but a complex mathematical equation. But even that wasn't the real answer. When he solved the equation, the result was a set of star coordinates. He looked up those coordinates in the ship's navigation database. They pointed to a small, unremarkable star system that wasn't mentioned in any of the historical texts. "I think the riddle isn't asking for a philosophical answer," Taeho announced to the assembled scholars. It's giving directions to a place that was important to your ancestors. The room erupted in discussion. Elder scholars who had spent decades studying the riddle looked at Teho's solution with amazement. "But what does it mean?" asked one of them. Teho shrugged. "Maybe the truth about existence isn't something you think about. Maybe it's something you have to go find." Zella, who had been watching silently, smiled. "Simple wisdom is often the most profound," she said. The second trial is past. 2 trials down, 1 to go, but Teho had a feeling the final test would be the hardest of all. The bond of trust couldn't be planned or prepared for. It would come when it came, and when it did, it would test whether he truly belonged with this family of warriors. That night, as he lay in his quarters, Teho realized something that surprised him. He was starting to hope he would pass not just for Kira's sake, but because he was beginning to care about these people who had accidentally become his family. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. Outside his window, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that one small human was slowly learning what it meant to belong somewhere among them. The third trial came sooner than anyone expected, and in a way that no one could have planned for. Teho was in the engine room helping repair a power coupling when the ship's alarm system started screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors, and he could hear the sound of running feet as crew members rushed to their stations. Kira appeared in the doorway, wearing her combat armor and looking more serious than he had ever seen her. "We're under attack," she said. 3 pirate ships, Scorvian class. They're demanding we surrender our cargo." Teho followed her to the bridge, where Elder Nex was standing in front of a large display screen. On it, 3 sleek warships could be seen approaching the Stellar Fang. They were smaller than the clan ship, but they looked fast and heavily armed. "Status report," Elder Nex commanded. "They've disabled our jump drive with some kind of electromagnetic pulse," reported the navigation officer. "We can't escape to hyperspace." "Weapons? Our main guns are operational, but they have us outnumbered. If we fight, we might win, but the ship will take heavy damage." Elder Nex's face was grim. The Stellar Fang carried not just cargo, but civilians, families with children who couldn't fight. "A battle would put them all at risk, sir," Teho said quietly. "May I see the technical specifications of those pirate ships?" Elder Nex looked surprised, but he nodded to the navigation officer, who brought up detailed scans of the enemy vessels. Teho studied the displays, his engineer's mind working quickly. The Scorvian ships were fast and well-armed, but they had a weakness. Their power systems were designed for speed, which meant they had to choose between maximum weapons power and maximum shield strength. "I have an idea," he said, "but I'll need access to our weapons control system." "What are you planning?" Kira asked. "Those ships can't run full shields and full weapons at the same time. If I can modify our weapons to fire in a specific pattern, I can force them to choose between protecting themselves and attacking us." Elder Nex looked skeptical. "Our weapons officers are trained for this kind of combat." "With respect, sir, they're trained to fight other warriors. Pirates don't fight fair. They use tricks and weaknesses that honor-bound fighters might not think of." For a moment, the bridge was quiet except for the sound of the approaching ship's engines. Then Elder Nex nodded. "Do it." Teho worked frantically at the weapons console, reprogramming the targeting systems and power distribution controls. Instead of firing all weapons at once in a devastating attack, he set them to fire in rotating sequences that would keep constant pressure on different parts of each pirate ship. "Incoming transmission from the lead pirate vessel," announced the communications officer. A face appeared on the main screen, scarred, ugly, with the kind of smile that promised violence. "Vorthak's ship, this is Captain Vex of the Crimson Blade. You have 30 seconds to surrender your cargo and prepare to be boarded, or we'll blow you apart." Elder Nex stepped forward, his presence commanding even through a video transmission. "This is Elder Nex of the Stellar Wind Clan. We do not surrender to pirates." Captain Vex laughed. "Then you die like fools. All ships attack." The space around the Stellar Fang erupted in weapons fire. But instead of the concentrated barrage the pirates expected, Teho's modified weapons began their rotating attack pattern. The first pirate ship took hits to its shields, just as it was powering up its main guns. Forced to choose, the captain diverted power to shields, reducing his weapons' effectiveness. The second ship tried to maintain weapons power, but Taeho's targeting system immediately focused on its weakened shields, causing significant damage. Third ship attempted to adapt, constantly switching between weapons and shields, but this made it ineffective at both. "They're confused," reported the tactical officer with amazement. "They can't figure out what we're doing." But the battle was far from over. Captain Vex was experienced, and he quickly realized what was happening. "Clever little trick." His voice came over the communications channel. "But we have more ships than you have tricks." 3 more pirate vessels appeared on long-range sensors, moving in fast. 6 ships, Elder Nex said grimly. "Even with your modifications, we can't fight them all." Taeho's mind raced. The original 3 ships were damaged, but still dangerous. 6 ships would overwhelm their defenses no matter how clever his tactics were. Then he had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Sir, I need you to trust me," he said to Elder Nex. "Order all non-essential crew to the escape pods, but don't launch them yet." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to make the pirates think we're abandoning ship. When they move in close to board us, I'll detonate the electromagnetic pulse charges in our cargo bay. It will disable their ships just like they disabled our jump drive." Kira stared at him. "That pulse will also disable our own systems. We'll be helpless." "Not all our systems. I've been studying Vorthak engineering. Your ships have manual backup controls that don't rely on electronics. We can still maneuver and fire weapons manually. The manual systems are incredibly difficult to use," Elder Nex said. "It takes years of training to operate them effectively." "Then it's good that I've been watching your crew work for the past 3 weeks, Taeho replied. "I may not have years of training, but I understand the mechanical principles." Elder Nex looked at his daughter, then back at Taeho. Making this decision meant trusting not just Taeho's plan, but trusting him with the lives of everyone on the ship. "Do it," he said. The next few minutes were chaos. Escape pods began launching from the stellar fang, making it look like the crew was abandoning ship. The pirates, thinking they had won, moved in close to capture the valuable clan vessel. When all 6 pirate ships were within range, Taeho triggered the electromagnetic pulse. Every electronic system in the area went dead. The pirate ships drifted helplessly, their crews probably panicking as they realized they had been tricked. But the Stellar Fang wasn't helpless. Working together, Taeho and the Vorthak crew began operating the manual controls. It was difficult and exhausting work, but they managed to get the ship's weapon systems back online. The pirates found themselves completely outgunned by a ship they thought was disabled. "This is Elder Nex," came the transmission on an emergency frequency that still worked. "Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic law. Continue to threaten my clan, and you will be destroyed." The pirate ships surrendered. As the crew worked to restore electronic systems and collect the escape pods, Taeho found himself surrounded by Vorthak warriors who looked at him with new respect. "The 3rd trial is passed," Elder Nex announced. "You showed not just loyalty to your clan, but the willingness to risk everything to protect your family." But their celebration was interrupted by an urgent communication from Nexus Station. "Elder Nex," came the voice of the station commander. "We've received word that the Galactic Council has called for a formal tribunal regarding the marriage contract between your daughter and the human Taeho Kim. The marriage has created a diplomatic incident." Taeho felt his heart sink. A diplomatic incident? Word has spread throughout the galaxy about the first official marriage between a human and a Vorthak, Elder Nex explained. Some species see it as an opportunity for greater cooperation. Others see it as a threat to the purity of their bloodlines. 3 days later, they arrived at the neutral space station where the Galactic Council held its sessions. The station was enormous, home to representatives from dozens of different species. As they walked through the corridors, Taeho could feel alien eyes watching them with everything from curiosity to disgust. The tribunal chamber was a vast amphitheater with seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Representatives from major galactic civilizations filled the seats, while Taeho and Kira stood in the center with their legal advocates. The prosecutor was a tall, thin being with gray skin and large black eyes. When he spoke, his voice was cold and precise. "This marriage is a mockery of galactic law," he argued. The human had no understanding of Vorthak customs when he made his wager. To allow this marriage to stand would set a dangerous precedent that could be abused by any species, seeking to take advantage of cultural differences. But their defender, a wise old being from a species known for their legal expertise, countered strongly. The human may not have understood the specific law, but he understood the nature of gambling, she argued. He willingly risked everything he owned. That he received more than he bargained for does not invalidate the contract. For hours, representatives from different species debated the case. Some argued that humans were too primitive to enter into contracts with advanced species. Others pointed out that cultural exchange was the foundation of galactic civilization. Then Elder Nex was called to testify. "You have lived with this human for over a month," the prosecutor said. "Has he shown any ability to adapt to Vorthak culture?" Elder Nex stood tall and spoke with pride. "He has not only adapted, he has improved our way of life. His engineering skills have solved problems that our best minds could not. His different perspective has taught us new ways of thinking. And in combat, his loyalty to our clan was absolute." Zila testified next, describing how Taeho had earned the respect of the entire clan through his actions, not his words. But the most powerful testimony came from Kira herself. 6 months after the tribunal, Taeho Kim was beginning to understand that being married to a Vorthak warrior princess was nothing like the stories he had read as a child. For one thing, there were no towers to rescue her from. Instead, she was usually the one doing the rescuing when his latest engineering experiment went wrong and filled their quarters with smoke. For another thing, their honeymoon had been spent in an asteroid field, mining rare crystals that would power the new hybrid, engines Taeho had designed by combining human and Vorthak technology. "Hand me that crystalline matrix," Kira said, not looking up from the engine component she was working on. Over the months, she had become surprisingly good at engineering, while Taeho had learned enough basic combat skills to avoid embarrassing himself completely. "Which one?" Taeho asked, looking at the various glowing crystals spread across their workbench. "The blue one that hums when you touch it." Taeho carefully picked up the crystal, which immediately began vibrating in his hands. Even after all this time, Vorthak technology still amazed him. The crystals didn't just store energy, they seemed to be alive, responding to the emotions and intentions of whoever handled them. "Perfect," Kira said, taking the crystal and installing it into the engine matrix. "This should increase our efficiency by another 15%. Their hybrid engines had become famous throughout the galaxy. Other species were sending delegations to study how human creativity and Vorthak engineering could work together so effectively. Taeho and Kira had accidentally become ambassadors for interspecies cooperation. "Message coming in," announced Roth, sticking his head into their workshop. At 46 years old, he was still considered young by Vorthak standards, but he had become one of the ship's best communications officers. He was also still fascinated by human culture and had learned to speak Earth slang better than most humans. "Who's it from?" Kira asked. "Your sister-in-law, the human diplomat lady." Bo-Ra Lee had been shocked when she finally tracked down her missing brother and discovered he was married to an alien warrior and living on a clan ship. But after the initial surprise, she had thrown herself into establishing formal diplomatic relations between Earth and the Vorthak worlds. "Put her through," Taeho said. Bo-Ra's face appeared on their communication screen and she looked excited about something. "Taeho, Kira, I have amazing news. The Earth Council has agreed to the cultural exchange program. We're sending 50 human engineers to work with Vorthak clans, and the Vorthak are sending 50 warriors to help train our defense forces." "That's wonderful," Kira said. "But you look like there's more news." Bo-Ra grinned. "There is. 3 other human Vorthak couples have gotten married in the past month. You two started something big." Taeho felt a warm feeling in his chest. The idea that his accidental marriage had helped bring 2 species together was better than any engineering achievement he could imagine. There's something else, Bora continued, her expression becoming more serious. We've detected some unusual signals from deep space. Unknown ships, very large, heading toward the inner systems. The Galactic Council is calling an emergency session. The warm feeling in Taiho's chest turned cold. Unknown ships? The energy signatures don't match any known species, and they're big. Each one is the size of a small moon. After Bora signed off, Taiho and Kira sat in silence for a moment, holding hands and thinking about what this might mean. Their quiet moment was interrupted by Elder Nex's voice over the ship's communication system. All senior clan members, to the war room immediately. We have received urgent communications from the Galactic Council. The war room was filled with tension when they arrived. Holographic displays showed the positions of the unknown ships, and the news was not good. There were 12 of them, arranged in a formation that suggested military organization. First contact attempts have failed, Elder Nex reported. The ships don't respond to any communication, but they have been scanning every inhabited system they pass through. Scanning for what? Asked Zella. We don't know, but 3 days ago they destroyed an automated research station that tried to get closer to them. They used weapons we've never seen before, some kind of energy beam that completely disintegrated the station. Taiho studied the holographic displays, his engineer's mind trying to understand what they were dealing with. The ships were unlike anything in Galactic Council records, but there was something familiar about their energy signatures. I've seen readings like this before, he said slowly. In some very old human archaeological sites, ancient ruins where the stones had been melted by intense heat. Kira looked at him sharply. How old? 10,000 years, maybe older. Elder. Nex frowned. You think these ships are connected to ancient human history? Not human, Taiho said, his understanding growing. Something that visited Earth long ago and left. Now it's coming back. Over the next few days, as the unknown fleet continued its approach toward the core systems, the galaxy began to panic. Some species wanted to fight, others wanted to hide, and a few suggested trying to communicate by offering tribute, but Taiho had a different idea. What if they're not invaders? He suggested during a council meeting. What if they're explorers, like us? What if they left Earth thousands of years ago and are just now returning to see how life has developed? Then why did they destroy the research station? Elder Nex asked. Maybe they saw it as a threat. Think about it. If you had been traveling through space for thousands of years and came back to find your old neighborhood filled with strange new creatures, you might be cautious too. Kira nodded thoughtfully. He has a point. When we first met Taiho, we tested him before accepting him into our clan. Maybe these beings are testing us. Testing us how? By seeing how we react to them. Do we immediately attack? Do we run away? Do we try to understand? It was Zila who made the crucial connection. The scanning they're doing. What if it's not looking for weapons or resources? What if they're looking for intelligence, for signs of technological and cultural development? Taiho felt excitement building. That's it. They're not scanning for targets. They're scanning for potential. The plan they developed was risky and completely unprecedented. Instead of meeting the unknown fleet with warships, a small group of diplomatic vessels from different species would approach them. But the most important ship in the group would be the Stellar Fang, carrying representatives of the newest interspecies alliance in the galaxy. When the moment came, Taiho found himself standing on the bridge next to Kira, watching as their ship approached the lead vessel of the ancient fleet. It was enormous, made of materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Incoming transmission, reported the communications officer. A face appeared on their main screen, but it wasn't quite a face as any of them understood it. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, ancient beyond measure, with eyes that held the wisdom of eons. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. We are the architects. We seeded life throughout this galaxy long ago and have now returned to see what has grown from our work. Elder next stepped forward. "We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We welcome you home." The ancient being's expression changed, showing something that might have been surprise. "Home," it repeated. "Yes, this was once our home, but we did not expect to find what we have found." "What have you found?" Kira asked. "Growth beyond our expectations. Species that were barely learning to use tools when we left have now learned to work together across the barriers of biology and culture. You have created something we never achieved. True cooperation between radically different forms of life." The being's gaze seemed to focus on Tejo and Kira. "The bonding of your species represents something new in galactic evolution, a willingness to change and adapt that we lost long ago in our pursuit of perfection." "Are you staying?" Tejo asked. "No. Our time is finished. But we leave knowing that what comes after us will be greater than what we were." The being smiled, an expression that somehow conveyed both sadness and hope. "Take care of our garden. Help it grow." The ancient ships departed as mysteriously as they had arrived, leaving behind only a changed galaxy that now knew it was part of something much larger and older than they had ever imagined. 1 year later, Tejo stood in the nursery, aboard the Stellar Fang, looking down at 2 sleeping babies. They were the first human-Vorthak hybrids in galactic history, with their mother's blue skin and their father's brown eyes. The boy had been named Jin, and the girl was called Su-Jin. "They're beautiful," Kira said softly, joining him beside. "They're cribs. They're going to grow up in a very different galaxy than either of us did," Tejo replied. "Better or worse?" Tejo thought about everything that had happened since that night in the cantina when he had made the worst bet of his life. He thought about the family he had gained, the love he had found, and the future that was opening up for all the species of the galaxy. "Definitely better," he said. From the corridor came the sound of Roth's voice as he attempted to teach a group of human engineers some Vorthak combat techniques. "No, no, no. You hold the weapon like this, not like you're afraid it's going to bite you." "But it is glowing and making angry noises," came the nervous reply of one of the humans. "That's how you know it's working."